Last time, we took a look back to see if Arkham Asylum really was a masterpiece, and it seems only fitting that we take a look at the sequel now, Batman Arkham City. Now, if you haven't seen my last video, no need to watch it right now, just give it a watch once the video's over, because it's really similar, and I think you'll enjoy it. So, with that having been said, shall we begin? Now, the story for Arkham City is a little bit more complicated than Arkham Asylum's, and I do think that you can get away with a more ambitious story with your sequels. So, how does Rocksteady raise the stakes for Arkham City? Well, now Batman has to go up against a major conspiracy to kill all the inmates of Arkham City. While this is going on, Batman is also infected with the Joker's tainted blood, and if he doesn't get the cure within a couple of hours, he will die. See, this is a much more interesting and complicated plot than Arkham Asylum's Stop the Joker. And Rocksteady can get away with this because they already had the more tamer plot in Arkham Asylum. So, for Arkham City, it's time to let loose a little bit. I also commend Rocksteady for having the balls to kill off the Joker, even if it's only for a little bit. They even give Catwoman a pretty interesting story where she tries to escape from Arkham City, but to do so she must steal from Two-Face and ends up getting caught. After being saved by Batman, she convinces Poison Ivy to help her steal from Tiger Security to get her stuff back. Rocksteady even gives you the choice to leave Arkham City early to end the game.
Screw him.
However, they do immediately rewind time back and make you choose the canon option. I think that it is really great that Rocksteady was able to balance two great stories being told at the same time, while still having them feel like two completely different stories that only intertwine briefly. Arkham City also is the first game in the series to introduce side quests, and I think that Rocksteady also did a great job with these, because they offer such a variety of new things to do. I especially love the side quests that involve you being a detective because it's more the forgotten part about Batman that movies, video games, and TV shows seem to forget quite often. Other side quests include destroying the remaining Titan for Bane, doing gliding challenges to obtain the Grapno Boost upgrade, and answering the phones for Zaz. The Grapno Boost being one of the most important upgrades because it lets you glide around the city significantly faster. But most importantly, these side quests make you feel even more like Batman and really make this dark world feel a little bit more alive. Since Arkham Asylum introduced the bare bones of Batman's rogues gallery, it was really important that Rocksteady branches off and starts to introduce more characters for Batman to interact with because Batman is in a significantly bigger environment in Arkham City. Some of the most notable additions to the game are Mr. Freeze, Clayface, Two-Face, Penguin, Ra's al Ghul, Catwoman, Hugo Strange, and Robin. Other characters are added to the game for side quests like Deadshot, Hush, Azrael, and Mad Hatter. There are even smaller cameos that really flesh out the world, like Black Mask and Calendar Man. Calendar Man is really interesting because he has different dialogue depending on what holiday is happening in the real world. I also really enjoy that most of the villains from the previous game make an appearance in some way, shape, or form. The only two that I wish had more of a prominent role are Killer Croc and Scarecrow. Killer Croc does get a cameo that you get to experience later on in the game, and Scarecrow only gets a riddle, but he does have a hidden location hinting at his return in Arkham Knight. Rocksteady also decided to sideline the Joker a bit more in this game, letting some of Batman's other rogues gallery take the center stage, like Ra's al Ghul. Arkham City also expands the roster of playable characters. These characters include Robin, Nightwing, and Catwoman. All three of these characters are really unique with how they play and what gadgets they get. My favorite new character to play as is Nightwing because they put a lot of effort into him, even if he isn't playable in the story. Another great character that they add is Azrael, who is a mysterious figure watching Batman throughout the game, and keeps popping up in different locations to tell Batman a whole bunch of things. Like that Gotham will be destroyed soon, and not to show up in Gotham Knights for too long. Batman's suit also gets destroyed to no end by the end of this game, and they even have Batman start to get more and more sick while the game goes on. They just keep adding these little details that bring you more and more into the story. The final thing about the characters that I love is that Rocksteady got most of the cast of the animated series to return. Both Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill return as Batman and the Joker, respectively.
Imagine sucking down that last breath knowing that Gotham is doing the same.
What are you talking about?
Oh, didn't I say? I've spent weeks shipping samples of my blood to emergency rooms all over the city.
So that's Protocol 10. Poison Gotham. I expected more.
Protocol 10? Never heard of it. Hold tight. I'll be in touch!
And that's always a win. The only cast member who doesn't return is Arlene Serkins to reprise her role as Harley Quinn. But she is now voiced by the legendary Tara Strong.
You're supposed to be dead! Well, there's no way you're getting to Mr. J. We're safe and sound up here.
Tara has had a long list of very impressive characters that she has voiced, and some of the most notable ones are Timmy Turner from the Fairly Odd Parents, Raven from Teen Titans, and Bubbles from the Powerpuff Girls. Now, if you ask me, Arkham Asylum already had a pretty decent combat system that every now and again just wouldn't work the way it needed to. And it amazes me that Rocksteady took this combat from good to amazing. All the problems I had with the last game are basically gone, with them only acting up once in a blue moon. They also added new combos like the disarm combo that completely gets rid of enemies' guns or riot shields. They also added a new stun combo and a combo that takes out anyone who's knocked out on the ground. I am a little sad to see the throw go, but overall, I'm really glad that Rocksteady didn't change too much about the combat and mainly wanted to improve the old combat because it could have been really easy for Rocksteady to focus on adding more than improving. Another great thing that Rocksteady added was quick inputs for your gadgets, and this was a much needed thing, because in Arkham Asylum, using a gadget mid-fight basically served as an easy way for enemies to land hits on you. Speaking of gadgets, I am much more satisfied with Batman's gadgets in this game because you have so much more. Batman's new gadgets in this game are the Freeze Blast, Disruptor, Smoke Bomb, and the electrically charged gun. Rocksteady also improves on existing gadgets like the Line Launcher and Remote Control Batarang. First off, the Remote Control Batarang doesn't have a cooldown anymore, and also just controls a whole lot better. They also added the Reverse Batarang you can use to knock down opponents closer to you. The Line Launcher now lets you deploy a new line mid-air and even allows you to walk on it like a tightrope. Smoke bombs do exactly what they sound like they do. They create smoke so you can take down your enemies with cover or make a quick escape. The Disruptor makes it so enemies can no longer use their guns, and this is probably the gadget that I used the most, especially in stealth encounters. The Freeze Blast has two variants. One completely freezes them in place, and the other freezes their ankles so they can't go anywhere. This provides a really interesting dynamic where you can either choose to freeze one completely for a while or a bunch for a shorter duration of time because you can't do both. The electrically charged gun is mostly used to help solve puzzles, but it also helps stun bigger enemies for a minute. Overall, I would say that Rocksteady greatly improved on the gadgets for the sequel because it doesn't feel like all that I have is a bunch of different variations of Batarangs. Another thing that Rocksteady did was also improve and add to stealth combat by adding more things to remember, but not too much to where it overwhelms. Stealth locations now have more environmental things like fire hydrants to provide smoke cover and generators that steal enemies' weapons when charged. Rocksteady also added new enemies with signal disruptors that make detective vision completely useless until you destroy the jammers. They also added snipers and armored thugs with guns. This overall adds a refreshing version of stealth where it isn't too far from the original, but just different enough to where it feels new. My major problem with Arkham Asylum was that most of the boss fights were either underwhelming or just bad, with little shimmers of greatness. And I am so proud to say that Arkham City does a great job with how they handle boss fights. However, there are still some stinkers in there, like Deadshot. Deadshot gets the Zsasz treatment in which you take him down really easily, and that's it. He's not in the game anymore. I will say that I do prefer Deadshot over Zsasz just because I like Deadshot more than I like Zsasz. Speaking of Zsasz, he also gets a very underwhelming boss fight because all you do is parkour around him until eventually you do a takedown on him. Now, These fights are just very disappointing because Deadshot is a great Batman villain and deserves a great boss fight, and Zsasz already got his crappy boss fight out of the way in Arkham Asylum. However, there are still some villains that just completely don't get a boss fight, like Bane, Hush, and Black Mask. Black Mask I can at least forgive a little bit because his only real purpose is for a cameo at the beginning of the game and a riddle later on talking about how he escaped from Arkham City. Now, I would have preferred at least a small fight with him because he's such an interesting villain and my fourth favorite Batman villain. I think that Hush also could have benefited from a little boss fight, even if it's just like a gang beat up. I mean, imagine being in his operation room and having like 15 guys rush you, being promised riches from a guy who looks like Bruce Wayne, and while you're fighting, that gives him time to escape Arkham City. I just don't really buy that he managed to escape the prison within 30 seconds, seeing that you're in the middle of the map. But the worst part about all of this is what they did to Bane. Now, I like Bane. He's my fifth favorite Batman villain, and Bane's boss fight at Arkham Asylum wasn't good, but at least he got one. In Arkham City, you beat him in a cutscene. Yeah, while playing this game, I realized that Rocksteady never did Bane correct because he goes from having the worst boss fight in Arkham Asylum to not getting one in Arkham City, and that is just shameful because he deserved so much more, and thank God Arkham Origins did him right. Now, there are some okay boss fights in the game too, like Poison Ivy, Mad Hatter, Penguin, and Riddler. All of these villains, except Riddler, all have gang boss fights where once you beat their henchmen, you beat them. I will say that Mad Hatter is the better one because you have to attack him to progress the fight along, but most of it's just attacking hypnotized henchmen. Riddler gets a stealth boss fight where you have to try to avoid being spotted in lights until you get under him to take him down, and honestly, it's just really satisfying ending for Riddler, especially because this game has the perfect amount of Riddler trophies. I even think that the mini-bosses are pretty good in this game with the Enforcers because they teach the player that stunning is going to be a much bigger part in this game. Now, for the rest of the villains in the game, they all get great boss fights. These boss fights are Solomon Grundy, Ra's al Ghul, Joker, Mr. Freeze, Clayface, Two-Face, and Harley Quinn in the free DLC. Solomon Grundy serves as the player's first big boss and really shows that Rocksteady stepped up their game with their second installment. Ra's gets an amazing fight as well. I especially love how this feels the most one-sided boss fight in the game, because you are in Ra's own nightmare world where he can summon an entire army to fight you, and then within 2 minutes, he becomes a giant version of him. Two-Face and Harley Quinn basically get the same boss fight where you use a different character, other than Batman, to fight them. Two-Face gets Catwoman and Harley Quinn gets Robin. Even though they are basically the same boss fight, they still provide a challenge with the fact that the guards don't stop respawning, so you have to take more risks in fighting them head on. Joker's boss fight is that you have to fight him normally, but Joker doesn't play by the rules, so he sends everything he's got onto you like Mr. Hammer and a Titan Thug. And is actually pretty challenging, just because there are so many henchmen to fight, plus 2 mini-bosses and Joker, who won't go down until everyone else has. Now, I'm sure going into this segment, everyone who has played Arkham City knew who was going to be my favorite boss fights, and if you haven't pieced it together yet, well, Clayface is my number 2. First off, they do a great job at hiding him in this game, because you never see what he looks like until the very end of the game, with only some very clever foreshadowing during the game without giving you too many clues. For instance, how many people noticed that Joker doesn't have any bones in this boss fight? Second, this fight gives us Batman wielding a sword, and I think that I can speak for everyone when I say this is something that everyone needs in their life. Finally, this boss fight is so much more satisfying than Titan Joker we got in Arkham Asylum. But the best boss fight in this game is Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze isn't just the best boss fight in this game though, he has the best boss fight in the whole franchise. That's how good he is. The best thing about Mr. Freeze is that he learns from your attacks, making it impossible to attack the same way twice. An example being, say that you do a floor takedown on him from a vent. Well, now you can't do that anymore because he freezes the grates. Or let's say you do a stealth takedown on him. Well, that's out of the question now because now he's got protection on his back. The fact that Rocksteady did such a good job at making this boss fight back in 2011 shows just how much they cared for this game. I'd even be willing to say that I think Mr. Freeze is one of the best boss fights in all of gaming history. Rocksteady also did an amazing job once again with the environment of Arkham City. Not only did they do a great job at laying out the map very well, but they also made another equally iconic location with Arkham City. The map is so recognizable that most players by the end of this game can traverse the map without even looking at it. They also did a great job in making Arkham City feel really lived in with a bunch of used mattresses and fires around the city. City also does a great job with the buildings you can enter within the city. I especially always enjoy going back to the museum, church, and GCPD building. The museum probably being my favorite because it references to the great Batman universe, and it also has a goddamn shark in it. And who doesn't love a good shark? Rocksteady once again makes me sort of feel bad for the inmates of Arkham City because they quite literally are treated like sewer rats. The environment also serves as gang turfs for rivaling criminal bosses. Penguin gets the museum until Two-Face takes it over. Joker always gets the steel mill because he's the strongest, and Riddler gets everywhere because he's very sneaky. Arkham City also added a variety of new suits that Batman can wear throughout the story. Some of these suits are really good, and some aren't as good, so we're going to do a mini ranking right now of all the Batman suits. In last place, we have the animated series suit, and that really pains me to say because Batman the Animated Series is my favorite TV show of all time. But I just can't get behind the fact that it just doesn't fit in with the world. Next up, I have the Year One suit. This suit is just very boring to play as, and I do understand that it marks a time where Batman was not the most experienced crime fighter, so he doesn't have this giant beautiful suit just yet, but that doesn't make me really want to use it. Next up, I have the Earth 1 suit. This one never really stuck with me, and I always thought it was kind of an ugly design. However, it does kind of look like Owlman from some angles, so it does get points for me there. Next up, we have the Dark Knight Returns suit, and this one I like quite a bit more than Earth 1, but I rarely found myself using it. And after that, we have the 1970s suit. I just really like the blue and yellow, and it really does feel vintage and makes me think of the Silver Age of comics. In fourth, we have the Batman Ink suit. This one rides so high because it reminds me so much of the 1989 suit, mostly with the emblem in the front, but it still overall is a really nice suit. In third place, we have Batman Beyond, and I gave this one a pass on animation because it's from the future, and it makes more sense because of nanomachines. In second place, we have the original Arkham City suit. This suit really is just great, and I actually have come to like this suit more and more as time goes on. But in first place, we have the Sinestro Corpse Batman suit. This suit, I always found myself running because it just really is beautiful. Plus, it references the time when Batman wielded a yellow lantern ring, and you can even see it on his suit. Also, it might be because Green Lantern is my favorite DC hero, and this is the closest we have to a Darkest Night suit for him. Rocksteady has also added way more collectibles to collect, like character trophies and concept art. These are probably my favorite part of the Batman games in general because I think that it's really cool to see how they were originally going to make the game, and how they got to the final product. You also now get rewards for collecting Riddler trophies in an area. Usually those rewards are interviews with the inmates of Arkham City, like Mr. Freeze, Mad Hatter, and Two-Face, or you get more concept art and character trophies. Batman Arkham City is also the first game to introduce the New Game Plus feature. New Game Plus is the exact same story as normal story mode, but this time, enemies are harder and they're earlier on in the game. New Game Plus also gets rid of the icon above enemies' heads when they're attacking, which makes you really have to pay attention in fights. This is vital because enemies also do more damage. Another thing that separates New Game Plus from the original is that you get to keep all of your upgrades, gadgets, and Riddler trophies that you have already collected. And I must say, thank God they let you keep the Riddler trophies because there are 240 of them in the game, and I think it's a little much to ask the player to collect all of them again. Overall, I would say New Game Plus is the ultimate Batman experience, and it's totally worth beating the game again. Arkham City also has DLC in the form of Harley Quinn's Revenge, taking place after the events of Arkham City, and you get to play as Robin, and it's just great. It's more Arkham City from a different character, what can I say? In conclusion, Arkham City is Rocksteady's magnum opus, because not only is it their best game that they have made, but it's also their most important game. This game showed that Arkham Asylum wasn't just a fluke, and that Rocksteady cared deeply about the character of Batman by giving him one of the greatest sequels ever made. I would genuinely throw this game up there with the likes of Halo 2 and Assassin's Creed 2 with the best video game sequels. This game also improved on everything I and most people had with the last game. The combat is kind of wonky, well, boom, better combat. The gadgets are kind of boring, say no more, you get better gadgets. Graphics, while being very impressive for 2009, haven't aged very well. How about we make a game that still holds up graphically to this day? For every problem, Rocksteady had an answer. This game really is just perfect, and I always love coming back to the game more than Arkham Asylum. So, with that, I am proud to give Arkham City a 10 out of 10.
Get out of my way, bats! I've got a date with immortality! No! No!